Road 168 in the Fullerton ward. The Johns have applied to sever a 3,989.5 meters squared, 0.98 acre parcel and retain a 38.28 hectare, 94.59 acre parcel. And this is just another aerial image that we included in the report to council. The Johns are proposing to keep the barn on the retained lands. It's for storage purposes and not for the purposes of livestock operations. And then a condition of draft plan approval will be to change the use via change of use permit for the barn to ensure no livestock occur on the lands. And this image was taken looking to the north. So this image was taken looking west along the eastern side of the barn there. You can see the silo in the background as well. And the silo, again, is proposed to remain in the retained lands. The grain bin is also proposed to be retained with the retained lands. And then you can see on the right side of this image, the surplus dwelling that will be on the severed portion. And this dwelling has been deemed habitable on July 18th and is currently inhabited. The John's son will be living there and he has since purchased or is in the process of purchasing that. There is a well on the retained portions of the land. It's in pretty good condition. It's located approximately 261 meters from the severed parcel in the agricultural field. This is a bit of an aerial image of where the well is located in proximity to the severed portions of the retained land and the retained lands. There's also a second well located on the subject lands, and this well is proposed to go with the severed surplus farm dwelling. And it will be the dwelling's water source going forward. A condition of draft approval requiring the well located on the retained lands be disconnected from the house is going to be required to protect the water supply. And that's everything for me. If anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Okay, thank you, John. Any questions from members of council? Fairly straightforward severance, I think. So if there's no further questions, we do have a recommendation here. And the recommendation is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth receive the report entitled Severance Application File B20/22, submitted by Kathleen DeBlock of Monteith Ritzma Phillips Professional Corporation on behalf of Robert and Sally Johns for lands described as Part Lot 6, Concession 12 of the Hibbert Ward in the Municipality of West Perth. And that West Perth Council recommend that the County of Perth Land Division Committee approve the severance application file B20/22 submitted by Kathleen DeBlock on behalf of Bob and Sally Johns for lands described as part of Lot 6, Concession 12 of the Hibbert Ward, Municipality of West Perth, subject to the following conditions. And there is actually 13 conditions there, fairly standard conditions. With your approval, you've had it for the weekend. I won't read all 13 conditions unless you wish them read. And I see people nodding their heads that they don't wish them read. So that is the recommendation with regards to this severance. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Murray, seconded by Councillor Bell. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. And thank you, John. All right, moving on. Recreation Facilities and Park Manager, is Darcy on? I don't see him. Is he supposed to be on? Jeff, You're going to do that? Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I'll just get my camera turned on. Good. Darcy Cook's on vacation this week, so he prepared the report. We finalized it at the end of last week, and I put it on the agenda. The report was presented and available to you over the weekend. Unfortunately, the project still comes in over budget, and our recommendation as staff is that we proceed with the project just due to the risks of not proceeding. But we're open to council's deliberation and council's direction.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Questions from members of council? Councilor Rose.
I just want to make sure I'm reading this proper. It says 1.856 million, and that's Dom Construction. Is that the original one, Jeff?
Yes, that is the original.
And the revised one, which is smaller, is the 1.386, correct?
That's correct.
And I'm not trying to make light of the difference of the money, because money is money and it's the taxpayers' money. But I still think we might be better off sticking with the first one with the extra washrooms and the better facility. I just don't think it's right to build something we already know. If we take the smaller one, there will not be enough washrooms to go to standards. Is that correct?
No, the washroom allocation will meet code. I believe we did reduce the washrooms by one. So there's a small reduction in washrooms. The real loss between the first and the second is some footprint and that storage in the second level. And we reduced the truss size changes in a few things to cut down costs. I think you're on it's a very salient point for this debate about this building. The initial building was certainly a very nice building, and if we had been approved and got permission to tender it, we have every reason to believe in 2019 we would have been able to build that building, and that was a very nice building. When we met with the group of user groups to look at other options, we really compromised as far as we could, but we still feel that we're not taking away the utility of the building to use for the fair, and the multi-use nature of it has still been retained. So it is a bit of a compromise from what we first wanted, but we think it's still a very good building for the community and will serve the community for a long time.
Go ahead, Mary.
Being Mitchell has been expanding. And again, I'll take the committee because you guys were in on it. I wasn't. You don't feel that we might, it could be a little short-sighted that as we expand, we don't want to put an addition on, say, in a few years to do something which will cost 50% of what we originally did. It might be more cost-effective now. Not that I'm trying to just spend money, but you know what I'm trying to say.
So I don't anticipate we would ever do it as an addition. I think that first building was designed to capture the full amount of the grant, and I think would serve the community. Certainly members of this council will know how we would lay that site out to hold a Canadian fastball championship, ICS or whatever. I think it still serves the functionality we intended. It still serves the ability to provide for the fair. I'm very disappointed that we had to cut the building down because of the changes in the market, but I still think the building will serve the community well into the future. And I would anticipate as time goes on, the municipality is going to have other projects where they can look at picking up capacity and storage if we found we were short. I will point out, we didn't cut any of the storage for the user groups when we reduced the pavilion. And, having lockers for some of the user groups was something they really wanted. And a member and I hesitate to mention his name, but he's a very very wise member of the Agriculture Society's comments at the end of this process, where we are a growing community and I wouldn't cut it any more than we've already cut it, but it still functions very well with where we've cut it. So it's not everything we were hoping for, but I still think it fulfills our needs, and it's still over budget.
I'll take Councillor Tam and then Councillor Chinkowski. So Councillor Tam?
I was just going to ask that if this is the way that we choose to go, that if council can get this all circulated, like I don't think we've even saw this proposal from just so we can explain it to people.
Yeah, very good question. And yes, when we went back for the rebid, it didn't go on bids and tenders because it went back. The 5 original bidders were invited. So that's, yeah, you won't have seen the revised proposal. So thank you. We can certainly, if council does approve this, we'll begin to promote the revised proposal pretty heavily, because we'll have to change the fundraising plan, and we'll want to create some momentum for the project to get started. And if we get there.
Councillor Chinkowski?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, I think Councillor Rose touched on the concerns I had about accepting something less than what we originally wanted, and the fact that we're still over budget. The report notes that the public donation portion is incomplete. I think there's only 20,000 raised, and we're the budget's 270,000 short. And we will find out later with the treasurer's report about the continued infrastructure deficit on capital costs and operating costs continue to rise. And also our 2021 books haven't been, the audit process isn't complete. So I guess my question to my fellow councillors is, how do we justify going ahead with another project that will add to the already growing financial burden of responsibilities that we're placing on the taxpayers? And I would also point out that I'm not in favor of selling significant municipal assets to cover shortfalls in future capital costs and operating costs. And the report also mentions about the grant deadline extension being possible till 2025. So I would submit to my fellow councillors, is there not a better way to approach this project without other than making a decision to proceed at the present time? I think we're overextending ourselves considerably. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dean. Anybody else? And I'm going to throw Jeff under the bus here, maybe. But can you highlight, give us an executive summary of basically the differences in between the original proposal and the one that we have here now?
I'm certainly not as well versed at doing this as Darcy would have been, so I'll do my best. We narrowed it slightly. We reduced the length, and so I believe we went from 80 feet to 68, if I'm not mistaken. The length went from 130 down, I'm thinking it was 110, but I don't recall exactly. I'd have to pull it up. I'd have to go looking for the document, Mayor McKenzie. But we reduced the square footage in total by about a quarter to a third, the overall square footage. And we took away the second story storage, which would have, obviously been a tremendous benefit to the municipality, because it's something you're always short of is storage, and we don't have a lot of storage in the new municipal office. But we took that away, and the savings from doing that allowed us to eliminate the fire separation between the first and second story, and allowed us to reduce the height of the building by approximately 3 feet. And that reduction is a bit of a compromise for the indoor basketball, but we're still satisfied that we could put nets at both ends. And it's certainly not as good of a basketball court that you would have in a gymnasium, but for the kind of use that we anticipate, unstructured free play, it'll serve just fine. So that's kind of a highlight of the main changes. We did leave the wash pad for supporting the fair. For example, if there was an animal show, there's still a wash pad. We left the ability to use the inside for stanchions for the fair, so that it has that multiple use. And I think we reduced the numbers of washrooms. I believe we dropped it by one in each overall.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And it wasn't my intent to throw you under the bus, but just to give us a general idea of the differences. And I know Darcy would have been up on that. Councillor Bell and then Councillor Tam.
Just my 2 cents worth. I do think we're being extremely short-sighted, but I understand costs are costs. I think as we decide whether we should do it or not, we should think really long and hard about the fact that it's a municipally owned building that falls extremely short of health codes and building codes and accessibility. So we have to do something, and we as a group did not hesitate to do something about our other municipally owned buildings when they fell short. We didn't hesitate. We made it work. We worked the plan, and we said this needs to be done for the community in our other municipal buildings. So I feel like we move forward because it's a municipally owned building that is not health code at all. Washrooms are horrible. I'm sorry, they're an embarrassment, and it's not accessible. So it's a moot point. The discussion is whether we do it or not. To me, is a moot point. It's just whether we build the big one or whether we build the small one. Just my 2 cents.
Okay, and just to clarify, you're talking the existing building that is there presently when you said it doesn't meet health standards. So,
yes,
yeah.
It does not.
Right.
Not even close, or accessibility, or any of the rules and laws that we are expected to follow from the federal and Ontario government. And when any other municipal building we've had in the last couple of years, this has come up, we have not even discussed whether we should do it or not. We just found a plan and made it work. So I don't agree with the discussion about whether we should do it or not. I think that's not a discussion. It's just what we build.
Okay, thanks, Harry. Councillor Tam.
What are the proposed timelines if this was awarded, Jeff? I just wondered if this is sensitive to this meeting.
Oh, the contractors indicate they would start in September or October and be completed in May of 2023.
Councillor Trinkowski again.
I guess to reply to Councillor Bell's observations, yes, we did proceed with other municipal capital projects. That was before we were told by the Treasury Department that there was a $4 million mistake in our accounting. So for me, the situation has changed significantly, and that's a message I've received from numerous constituents across the municipality, not just Logan, but all 3 wards in the Mitchell ward, all 3 rural wards in the Mitchell ward as well. And with your permission, Your Worship, I would like to request a recorded vote on the matter, please. Thank you.
Okay, so noted, Dean. Councillor Duck.
I just had a question because I think I came onto this kind of when it was happening. What happens if we don't make the $250,000 in expected donations or money brought in that way? Just so I'm clear.
Sure. So great question. And so first of all, the current state of donations, we've had some ball teams make some donations, and we issued the fundraising package, but we haven't pushed it because frankly, it's difficult to really push a fundraising package and encourage it without having the commitment from the project that it's going to go. And this was the kind of hurdle that could have been very problematic for us if we had started to fundraise. So, well, we've had ball teams that have made pledges and had donated proceeds of tournaments, and we've also consulted them on the redesign. We haven't really realized the real momentum of the fundraising program. So I would encourage you to not be alarmed that we haven't got a lot of fundraising. We really haven't been trying. If you, on the $250,000 goal or any other goal, as I described at the end of the report, I think you pick an amount, you fundraise it hard, you promote it hard, You have events based around the actual construction project to create momentum and maintain momentum. And then at the end of the project, you have to pick a date, which is the logical cutoff date to say, if you haven't made it, when you say that's the end of the fundraising, and we either have to finance it through reserves, or you have to finance it through raising levy to finance it, which is an option, but it's very, usually use that for annual needs, or you take that last little bit and get a loan for it and pay it out over time. So certainly there would be options. I'm saying with the timeline of this project, it would make sense to, if we did do a homecoming, use that as one of the things that we could say we're putting funds towards. So it's a needed, manifest, clear project that would, in this case, already be built, and it would be used by that event. And then in the 2025 budget process, if you still had an outstanding balance, then you would need to deal with how you would make up that difference. And in summary, and I think to kind of conclude, I realize this is risk, and I'm saying this generally for council, and I think the concerns are very warranted about it's a different scope and there's a different amount of fundraising in it than we anticipated. I've always thought the fundraising goal for this one was fairly modest. I think that it's something the community will really be able to get behind because of how we use that facility, but it is risk, and that's why we have to consider that. But there are risks for not doing it. The risk of not having the facility in the meantime, the risk of us having the current pavilion condemned, or at least have it has very limited use. We won't be able to use the booth, and that's fine. And we'll have to continue with using porta potties, which are functional, but it does limit you in terms of the big events. And then, of course, there's the risk of costs further escalating and we even get less for our money, which I think is there, but I can't predict that, or I'm not in the right business. And then finally, there's the risk that because this was a highly subscribed grant opportunity, I feel that it's logical that we should be able to get an extension, but I think there's always a risk that you don't get the extension for the leverage money, which in this case is $800,000 because of it being very highly subscribed. So in other words, there was way more money applied for than got it. The municipalities that got the money, even though we were delayed in getting the opportunity to spend it, which has put us in the position we're in, I think are expected to spend it, or else it'll be taken back and given to the next municipality that's willing to spend it. So those are just the realities. Those are the guideposts to assist your decision. I'm not, as staff, we're recommending we do it because we think the risks are higher than the reward you get for waiting, but we also realize that is risk involved.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Oh, sorry,
That's
Councillor
okay. I
Bailiwick.
just have one last thing. I absolutely respect what Dean's saying, and in parts of what he says, I completely agree with. But on the other hand, as speaking to user groups and community members, it's not their fault. It's not their fault. And the one who will be punished if we decide not to do it is our community. It's not their fault that we are in the situation we're in. And it's something that we've been working with user groups with now since 2019, promising them this great asset for our community as it grows. It's also a NASCAR economic development fella up there. You know, when you give assets like this to the community, it makes your community look more desirable, hence more people come, more businesses come. We're all tied together, right? Just my 2 cents. I absolutely respect where Dean's coming from, and I don't disagree on some of his points, but I guess the bleeding heart in me says it's not the community's fault. And they're the ones that we will have no booth. It should be condemned. And that's where we're at. Just my 2 cents.
Okay, Councillor Matheson.
Just a question on the when the first package went out for the sponsorship, how motivated was the community then? Did we get responses right away, or because I know it's kind of like you said, it's gone tapered off because don't have that end project. But I just wondered when we first said it, how quick was the response from the community?
So the package we put out had a number of things like diamonds, sponsorships, and elements like that. The AED machine and some of these things were on it. We had really good uptake immediately, and we'll have to honor those amounts, and those amounts probably make sense. The thing that we haven't sold is the individual plaques that are the sort of individual family members or individual persons who make a donation, and we didn't expect to get that to go. The corporate sponsorship part went pretty good, and Hannah might even be able to help me with some of that answer. We've actually picked up quite a few of those, and you'll notice those signs are on the ball diamonds. We know there's a lot of people that want to buy trees, but they're not going to buy trees until they know it's going to be a project. So there is that delay, but there was some pretty good immediate uptake.
Okay, Nicholas is on here, and I want to, I'm not trying to single him out at all, but I'm not sure if he has any questions. I'll give him the opportunity if he does on this particular topic. Nicholas, go ahead.
Yep, thanks, Walter. I would also echo what Sherry is saying about the short-sightedness that I think I would lean right now to, if we build it, they will come, and putting a little bit of extra into it now will pay dividends in the future. I don't know if that adds anything to the conversation, but I would lean towards let's get it done.
Okay, thanks, Nicholas. Councillor Duck.
My only question would be, I like what Councillor Rose said there. Is there any way we can maybe eliminate some of the storage space and add the bathroom back? Eliminate the washrooms is something I don't like personally. I find it's valuable. You know, you walk into the bathroom, there's only 1 or 2 stalls, and you're waiting on somebody or something. Probably worse off in the girl situation. But yeah, is there a way we can, eliminate a small amount of the storage space to put the washrooms back and still go ahead with this project, or is that something we can't do?
We could take a look at it through modifications to the contract. Be a bit tricky. I will mention that we have the women's washroom has four stalls, and the men's has 2 and 2 urinals. There's a small washroom in the kitchen for the running of the booth, and it's just the logistics of running the booth. It's very good to have a very small, like a closet washroom in there. And we have the large universal washroom on the corner, which is available from the outside. So there are a nice few washrooms. It's not just a couple. I really think the user group that got together and looked at this really put a high premium on balancing some storage for the teams, sort of locker style storage shared, in exchange for having 8 washrooms or whatever. But we feel 4 is a good number. If we had a really large event, you'd probably still want to bring porta potties in to complement, but this configuration of washrooms would support almost any event we would have.
Just, and I'm going to wrap up. I think everybody's had an opportunity here, but comment that the architect or engineer made, there's no more room to cut anymore on what we've got. He said we just can't do it and still have a usable building that you can utilize through the entire Westburg community. And I think you have to look at it. It's not just the ball teams. We've got the Agricultural Society. We're looking at some tennis. We're looking at all different kinds of uses for the entire community. And I just want to remind council, we've had a number of major projects over the last term or so. And all of our projects have come in or below estimate. And this one, unfortunately, as Jeff indicated, the grant came in 2019. Had we been able to tender back in 2019 instead of 3 years later, it would have been on target too. But we all know what's happened with COVID and what's happened with building supplies. And we're caught on this one and this particular project. But we have had success during COVID in building our other projects. So, I think we have to keep that in mind, that, we've had some good ones. And unfortunately, we've got caught on this one with with the way the economy has gone. So it's been requested that we have a recorded vote. And so what I'll do, I guess, is I'll read the recommendation, and then I'll get Dan to go around. Oh, we need a mover and seconder. Yes, okay, that's right. We do need a mover and seconder. I'll read the motion and we'll get a mover and seconder, and then it'll be a recorded vote. So the recommendation is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth approves the award of West Perth Tender 11/2022 Peterson Park Pavilion to Dom Construction in the amount of $1,386,950 plus HST. And the mayor and the clerk are here authorized to sign and seal the necessary documents. So do we have a mover and seconder for that motion? Moved by Councillor Murray and seconded by Councillor Matheson. Thank you. All right, Dan, do your magic.
Thank you. So for a recorded vote, please respond with yay or nay. Deputy Mayor Doug Eit, how do you vote?
Yay.
Councillor Sherry Bell, how do you vote?
Yay.
Councillor Steve Harold, how do you vote?
Yay.
Councillor Cheryl Matheson, how do you vote?
Yay.
Councillor Anna Marie Murray, how do you vote?
Yay.
Councillor Murray Rose, how do you vote?
Yay.
Councillor Mike Tam, how do you vote?
Yay.
Councillor Dean Trentowski, how do you vote?
Nay.
Councillor Ryan Duck, how do you vote?
Yay.
Councillor Nicholas Vink, how do you vote?
Yay.
And Mayor Mackenzie, how do you vote?
Yay. We haven't missed anybody? No, I don't think so. So that vote is carried. All right, moving on. Good discussion. Everybody had good points. There's no question about it. So it's just circumstances that we're in. Yeah. Okay, the next report is from our treasurer, and it's with regards to asset management plan updates. So Wendy, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Mackenzie, and good evening, Council. So before you is the asset management plan update report. And here is, in the report, there is the memorandum from Hampson Consulting, who prepared the 2019 asset management plan that was approved by Resolution 271 in 2020. And so basically they were hired to kind of solidify our plan because it's due to the province on July 1st. And so they just did a high level review and made sure that everything was still in compliance. And so you have the report and the memorandum before you. So if there's any questions, I'll gladly take them.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on that report? Dean, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Wendy, how are we making out? We have a dedicated employee dedicated to the tracking system, the inventory of our bridge structures and so forth in the municipality. That's part of this asset management plan as outlined in the report. How far are we into that process, and what are your comments on that process so far?
Sure. So our asset management technical analyst has been with us for just a little over a month, and he's fitting in just fine. He has been working on the streetlights, and in the report, it kind of identifies the reason why we're focusing on the streetlights, because it impacts the user rate, but also it gives us good inventory. And with the new lights that were installed in 2015, it kind of it'll give a nice summary when we're complete that review. And we've done the bridges. The bridges are all in the system in a GIS format, which is nice. And then we're just going to split out the annual requirement or the replacement value of all those by the end of the year. And so we're kind of mapping out each category and section for him, and he's going to go through each one of those. It'll take some time. There's over 5,000 assets in there, so it's just going to take some time to kind of evaluate our data so that it will be ready for the next asset management plan.
Other questions? Sorry, Wendy.
Oh, I was just going to say, hope that answered your question, Dean.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Wendy. I guess one follow-up question. Will we have enough information collected through the technicians' work to assist with the upcoming 2023 budget cycle? Thank you.
I think we won't have for all the asset categories. Our hope is to do the bridges and the streetlights and the vehicles. We'll have that data kind of massaged through, and we'll have tested it and validated against different things like insurance and the OSIM report and some GIS information. And then once we have those three categories, we're going to kind of look at some of the other outstanding categories: roads, water, wastewater, etc. I think it's going to take us some time to kind of massage through that data and make sure it's good for the next plan. But you'll start to see the financial data coming out of the asset management plan as we get it, the data consistent and reliable, and we can sign off on it.
Okay, anybody have any further questions? Oh, Nicholas is on here. Go ahead, Nicholas.
Yeah. Well, the municipalities. Where can I find in this report in terms the first time that they presented it? I think we gave a fair bit of feedback, but here I just see a bunch of and information back to, with a couple options that they're outlining for us that
you're breaking up.
To say is probably the same across all of the lower tiers.
So you were breaking up bad, Nicholas. We just got little bits of what you were trying to say, and I'm not sure what the question is.
Okay, I'll try it without the video on then, if that's all right. So is this just a canned report that all of the other lower tier municipalities got this very same report? And then where can I find the feedback that we gave the first time to them in this report? Because all I see is the same options that we gave, that they gave us as they gave the first time without taking any of the feedback. And then some of these scorecards that they promised us as well too. Where can I find some of them?
Very good questions, Councillor Vink. I don't know where the feedback is. All I have found is the original report, and then the lower tiers did get together, and Hempson wrote somewhat of a canned report, but they went through it with me, and we highlighted some of the items that we have worked on to show that we are looking at the data and making the data a little more focused to the new requirement. But as far as feedback, I can maybe circle back with Hempson and find out what that feedback is. Unfortunately, I don't know what that is.
And then I was also looking for some scorecards as well too. I think that's what they had promised the last time, that we could easily see with these scorecards what was happening.
Yeah, so when I reviewed it with them, the promise was to give us an Excel spreadsheet with some of this information in it. So through this report, this is where I located that we didn't have it on the network drive. So they have since gave it to me, and we are going to go through a training session so that we can filter that information through. I also have the asset management technical assistant working on those scorecards. I think until our data in citywide is reliable, for us to produce the scorecards are going to take a little bit of time. We can certainly look at them for the 3 groups that I talked about today, being bridges, streetlights, and vehicles. But without being able to validate the information, it makes it hard for our department to produce a scorecard.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Any of our other staff members here tonight have anything further to add? I'm just thinking maybe again at Jeff, what other municipalities or where they're at. I think we're all in about the same spot, are we not, Jeff, or no? No.
Yeah, I have nothing further to add, Mayor McKenzie.
Thanks. Wendy, I guess you can, like, as you said, you can circle back and come back again at a future meeting with any updates that Nicholas has brought to your attention, and we can go from there. You got to remember our employee has only been here, as you said, a little over a month, so more or less just getting his feet wet here right now. Okay, I do have a motion here, recommendation, and the recommendation, and if you're following along, the date is actually the 19th instead of the 7th. So the motion is the Municipality of West Perth approve the memorandum by Hampson Consulting dated July 19th, 2022 to be included as part of the 2019 Asset Management Plan and to be posted on the municipal website. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Trinkowski. Any further comments at this time? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thanks, Wendy. And the next one, I believe, is yours as well, the Ontario Regulation 284, with regards to where we are with the 2022 budget. So, Wendy, again.
So this is just a disclosure report from Regulation 284.02, is that if we don't budget for amortization, post-employment costs, and your landfill post-closure costs, that you need to write a report to council and disclose that. So that's what this report is, and some of the numbers as far as what our total amortization for 2021 was. So it'll be, I think it was oh, I'm on the wrong report, sorry. So our amortization was 3.7 million in 2021. So it'll be roughly that for 2022. And then your post-closure costs were 325,000 in 2021. And just being new and understanding some of this calculation is that we will expect to see it higher next year, and that is due to inflation. Inflation is part of the calculation in determining the post-closure cost of the landfill. So just extra information there. So if there's any questions, I'll gladly take them.
Thanks, Wendy. Questions on that? Okay, recommendation here is that the Municipality of West Perth approves the following excluded expenses from the 2022 municipal budget as required by the Municipal Act, Regulation 284.09, amortization of tangible capital assets, future post-employment benefit expenses, and solid waste landfill closure and post-closure expenses. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Harold, and Councillor Matheson. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. And now the consolidated financial statements, which I thought was what we were doing before. Wrong place on my agenda. So Wendy, again.
Thanks, Walter. So this report is your consolidated financial statements as of the end of June, and it's not as favorable as other ones that I've presented. So water is showing a surplus, whereas the general operation is not, but it's minimal. And the reason that it is showing this way is partly I listed in the report is that we've incurred some of our capital costs and we'll get the grant funding after the completion of those projects. So we've fronted up that money. And then some of the expenses that we've incurred, like insurance, they happen at the beginning of the year. And so again, we've paid those out, we've paid those expenses. And at the beginning of the year, not halfway through. And then the other one is the property tax bills are being generated and should be mailed out this week. And so the revenue portion of the budget is only showing the interim part. So that'll make an impact. And then our reserve transfers happen at the end of the year. So, or when the project's completed. So a lot of those transfers haven't happened yet. So if there's any questions, I gladly take them.
Okay, just a comment, I guess, Wendy, certainly this report for the first meeting in August, I don't think would be a way out of line to where we would be this time in 2021 or 2020. It's just the way the revenue is coming in. It hasn't come in, and yet our expenses have all come in at the first part of the year. So I think we're fairly comparable where we would be in a normal year of council. Any questions for Wendy on that? Oh, Dean, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, through you, your worship. There's one item, Wendy, that caught my attention, and maybe I'm not reading this line right. For the roads department, category 3000, the first line of expenses, the wages and benefits. It shows the budget, 2022 budget of 566,417, but the year to date shows just slightly over 684,000. So I'm just maybe not reading that number right. Or could you clarify what that means? Because I don't understand that.
Yeah, and that number is correct, Dean. So what we've held off on is the distribution. So we haven't distributed or job costed out Mike's department because we want to set up new wage accounts so that they're easily tracked and comparables for budget. We're just waiting for audit to complete before we set up those accounts and make that distribution. And so it will show high until we get it distributed.
So right now that line is just a placeholder until you get other lines created on the spreadsheet, correct?
Correct. So normally it would be in like grass cutting or tree trimming, et cetera, et cetera. So in the lines below, there would be wages in there, and currently isn't. It's all sitting in roads.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, moving on. Recommendation then is that Municipality of West Perth accepts the West Perth budget to actuals as of June the 30th, 2022 report as information. We have a mover and seconder, Councillor Rose, and seconder, Councillor Bell. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Next is the clerk's report, and the first item is with the Schellenberger Municipal Drain.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Council. Before you today is a report on the Schellenberger Municipal Drain Improvement Project. The project went out for tender and was in excess of 133% over budget. And in accordance with the Drainage Act, a meeting was held with the affected property owners. The result of the meeting was the consensus to go ahead with the improvement, even though it is over budget. Ultimately, the final decision, regardless of that meeting, rests in the hands of council. And as you'll see, in accordance with the meeting, staff are recommending that we go ahead with the project and approve the award to the lowest bidder.
Any questions for Dan on that? I think as we kind of had this discussion previously with Gaterson Park, it's kind of a sign of the times that, you know, things are coming in over what the usual engineer's estimate would be. And certainly this drain is another one. And it's been a while since they've been working on that drain. So again, there's a bit of a time factor. But if there's no further questions, the recommendation is that the Municipality of West Perth award the construction of the Schellenberger Municipal Drain North Branch Improvement to the bid submission received from AG Heater Contracting Limited in the amount of $186,825 plus HST. We have a mover and seconder for that, Councillor Murray and Councillor Matheson. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. The next is a petition by John Colkman for a Section 4. Dan, do you want to just highlight that?
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. As His Worship mentioned, we have a Section 4 petition for a new drain from property owner John Colkman, as well as 2 other neighboring properties. Just working through our standard rotation, we are looking for the Municipal Council to appoint Brandon Widener of Spreed Associates to prepare a report on the petition.
Okay, thanks, Dan. And how we picked Spreeds is just the rotation of engineers that we have, and it was their turn. So any questions on that request? If not, the recommendation is that the Municipality of West Perth accepts the petition received by property owner John Colkman under Section 4 of the Drainage Act, and that Council Municipality of West Perth appoints Brandon Widener of Spreed and Associates to prepare a report on the petition. We have a mover and seconder for that, Councillor Trinkowski and Councillor Harold. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. The next one then is also Dan's Bailiwick, cemetery bylaw update.
Thank you again. Before council is just a report for information. You'll see attached in the bylaw section is an updated bylaw. What we've done is taken the cemetery bylaws. There were 2 separate bylaws. One was fees and one was kind of the procedures and rules of the cemeteries. We've merged them into one bylaw, and we've updated the fee schedule in accordance with the BAO. The BAO sent an update, I believe, April of last year, that the fees had increased for care and maintenance funds, and we're catching up and getting the bylaw updated. If council did approve the bylaw today, it would not take effect until the bylaw was approved by the BAO. But again, the only change is the fee and the consolidation. And it was just a quick review in that way. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Dan on that? I did have a question I asked Dan today about it. And in there, it says there's no burials on, I got to think now, I believe, was it Saturday, Sunday, and holidays? And I questioned that. My feeling is, you know, like nobody knows when you're going to have a funeral. You have got a lot of control over that. And as long as the family was willing to pay extra for whatever costs would be involved for a Saturday, a Sunday, or a holiday, I don't know why we couldn't accommodate them. Like I'm thinking if somebody died through the week, such as this weekend, you know, and you know, they weren't going to be able to have a burial until Tuesday, and you know, the visitation maybe would have been on a Thursday or a Friday, but you can't do anything until, if you follow me, until Tuesday. So I just thought, I don't know why we couldn't accommodate a burial on a holiday or a Sunday or a Saturday, and just the provision that, of course, our people, if they were involved, would have to get time and a half, but it's a cost that we would just pass on to, well, I guess initially to the funeral home and them to the family. But it's still, it's still, I think, accommodating to the families involved. So I throw that out. I don't know what you want to do with it, but that's one thing that I saw when I went through it.
I did not have a good answer. I don't know the reason why. As I said, I didn't do a full review of the bylaw. This is the status quo. We're changing the fee. So I think if Your Worship and if council so desire for us to conduct a thorough review, we can certainly come back to council with a bylaw and some options on allowing that for a Sunday burial. And as well, we discussed stacked graves. Or multiple caskets in a grave of stacked or side by side, which we also do not permit currently. Whatever council's wishes is.
I throw that out to you. You can give staff direction as to what you would like to do. Anna Marie?
I think it's worthwhile to look into what you said, Walter, and to also look into the stacking. If that's not permitted now, I would suggest we do look into that.
I know it is allowed or was allowed. I can't speak for now because sometimes things change, but it used to be allowed in a couple other cemeteries in our area that are operated by churches. And I looked at, you're allowed 4 urns for cremations, but only 1 casket, but I know from being on another cemetery board that from time to time we have buried 2 in 1 plot. An example would be maybe a grandfather or something, and maybe a young child died, and they would bury that young child in that same plot. But I just think it's something that we could look into, and again, it's trying to accommodate the users of the cemetery. So. Any other comments on this? Dean, you're involved with North Logan. You got any comments at all? No.
Other than to support what you had said and what Councillor Murray recommended, we do a deeper dive on some of the details. You made an excellent point about the timing of burials. It's completely out of timing's out of everyone's control. So if we can offer some flexibility to people, I think that would be appreciated, because probably some relatives come from far away, and it's difficult to get everyone together at the same place at the same time for a funeral service.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll approve this for now, and then you'll come back at a later date with that other information.
I would just request that council approve or accept the report and direct staff to bring back more information regarding burial dates and the number of caskets allowed per plots.
Okay, so the recommendation is that the municipality of West Perth accepts the cemetery bylaws update report as information. We have a mover and seconder, Councillor Bell, Councillor Rose. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Again, that's carried. Thank you. CAO's report, the ICIP Green Transfer Payment Agreement.
I'm just going to step back for a moment there, Mayor McKenzie. Sure. Did you want to get a mover and seconder to direct staff to investigate?
We could do that if you wish. Sure. Do we have a mover and seconder to do that? Councillor Murray and Councillor Duck. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay, good. All right, now Jeff.
Thank you. I was dying to get to it. So I have a few reports here. The first one is a report that is simply seeking authorization for the mayor and clerk to sign the transfer payment agreement for the ICIP green infrastructure green stream that we were successful on. This has been reported to council in the past. The details of what the project will support are outlined in the report, but it's some significant upgrades for the water system 123 at 132 St. George Street. And we're just making sure that we have a resolution authorizing the signing of the transfer payment agreement, and we require it at this meeting because we're up against our deadline to do it.
All right, questions for Jeff on that? Don't see anybody's hands going up, so I'll read the recommendation here. That Municipality of West Perth direct the mayor and clerk to sign and seal all necessary documents to implement the ICIP Green Project for improvements to the Mitchell Drinking Water System Distribution Center at 132 St. George Street, Mitchell. We have a mover and seconder, Councillor Matheson, and seconded by Councillor Rose. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Good. And the next report for Jeff is the McKillop Pit.
Thank you, Mayor McKenzie, and I'll ask Paul McIntyre of Burnsides is going to present the slides that we have, and if Paul can take the podium and turn on the camera for the podium speaker. I'll just introduce the background of the report, and then I'll turn it over to Paul to present the slides. Paul will be more well positioned to answer the technical information about the findings of the report. Just before we go into the report, I want to remind everyone that we have this property, the McKillop Pit, which is actually located outside of West Perth. It was purchased by Logan some years ago, operated for gravel for a number of years, and now it has not been operated as a gravel pit. There hasn't been any extraction from it in over around 24 years. The assignment that I was asked to follow up was to do research on the quality and quantity of the aggregate, both in the licensed area and the potential in the buffer areas, and to report back to council and then seek direction on potential options for doing something with this property, whatever they may be. And so at this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to Paul McIntyre from Burnsides to actually review the findings of the report.
Good evening, Mayor McKenzie, members of council and staff. Thank you for having me here tonight. I did combine a report on the aggregate resource evaluation of the McKillop gravel pit. It's a 40-page report. But to summarize, I put together a slideshow of approximately 5 slides that we can go over and just get down to the meat and potatoes of the report. Move to the next slide. So the scope of the work we established as to establish whether the pit license is actually current. We did that. We contacted Ministry of Natural Resources and talked to them about this license. It is current. You could sell gravel from the pit today. To determine the amount of aggregate remaining within the license boundary, we'll get to that on slide number 5. To retain a soils consultant to establish the extent of the resource. So we hired CMT consultants out of St. Clements, and we utilized township resources. We dug 4 test pits within the existing gravel pit to establish the extent of where the resource is. And then CMT soils consultants extended 4 boreholes to establish the depth of the gravel. Submit representative samples for grain size analysis to verify the quality of the resource. So CMT has verified that the gravel there is suitable for granular B specification, and that meets Ontario provincial standard specifications. Next one is to complete a topographical survey of the site. Our resources, or our folks, did that. We completed the topographical survey, and we have updated all the plans that are from the original report. Calculated quantity of the aggregate resource, that we talk about on slide number 5, and complete a report. So moving on, the background. So the current pit license, again, this is through discussions with Ministry of Natural Resources, is an A license for extraction below the water table and the extraction an extraction limit of 60,000 tons per year is attached to this license. So this is the updated existing features plan. This is one of 4 plans that is contained within the license of the pit. The first yellow line is the license boundary. I think we listed on here the next slide as a property boundary. It's actually the license boundary. So this is the area that your license is referring to. Next slide. The red line is the extraction limit. So this is where the resource is actually contained within the license boundary. And then there are setback limits between the yellow line and the red lines. The next one is an updated cross-sectional plan. So this would be taking a knife and slicing through your property, basically north and south, and looking at it from the side. So advance the next slide. The yellow line represents the surface contour as it is today. And you can see the work that has been done in this pit, I think 1983 was when it was originally established, is reflected there. Next slide. The red line is the limits of extraction. So within your license and what you're allowed to extract is the area between the yellow line and the red line in cross section. And then the next slide. Oh, sorry. That would represent 331,420 tons of aggregate. The next slide is the limits of extraction. So the total area could be extracted if you could build in the area between the red line and blue line once you're done. You would have a total extraction amount of somewhere around 576,370 tons. That's a very quick synopsis of the report, and I'll turn it back to Mayor McKenzie for any questions.
Okay, questions for Paul on this? I'll maybe start here. You quoted you're allowed to take 60,000 tons a year out of that pit. Is that, how much gravel is that? Like, and this would be a question maybe more for Mike Kramer. How much gravel do we use on this here?
I'm not sure how much you use, but 60,000 tons would relate to, maybe Jeff was working his calculator. A triaxle dump truck would carry about 22 tons of gravel. So there's a lot of truckloads.
Yeah.
That 60,000 ton limit is what M&R asked you to tell them. An A license is unlimited. So if you have an A license, you can take out as much as you want it in any year, but they will ask you what you expect to take out. So somewhere back in history, the owners of the property and owners of the pit said we'd probably take out 60,000 tons a year, which is probably the amount that they thought they would need.
And I can maybe stand to be corrected, but I think when Logan was using it, because of the cost of transporting it to your roads, they were using it, I think, mainly for the north part of Logan Township. I don't think they used it for the entire township, but just for the north part. Dean, question?
To answer your question, Your Worship, about what we use annually, my notes from our budget deliberations earlier in the year, according to Mike, the information that Mike Kramer gave at the time, we apply 44,000 metric tons of granular per year.
Okay. Mike, go ahead.
I'm not sure if this question is for Paul or Jeff, or if this is even the place to ask it. I just had a question about the royalty agreements. If we have an idea of how it pays, I assume it's so much a ton, or how we track that. If you disagree on how much, if it is the 60,000 tons a year that they pay on, or if you need to be weighed in and weighed out, or how that works.
So I'll start. And so certainly Paul's got a lot of experience in this and can speak in detail about what we found and what the characterization of the remaining aggregate in the pit is. Where we go next around royalty agreements, a royalty agreement would typically be around $2 or $3 a ton. Is my estimate roughly?
I think maybe historically, but I think as things keep on going up, we'll probably see that number increase.
Yeah. So, you can anticipate a royalty agreement in that quantum, maybe 3. And so that's the one part of it. The second part of it is, how do you handle weighing in, weighing out, or more probably logically just counting trucks, counting loads? Those are things you have to work out with a royalty agreement. You want to get a good partner that you can trust, and you want to have a good agreement. And I'm kind of jumping ahead to where the report goes, but I think your options are, we can continue to do nothing, but I didn't put that in there because, we have this property that we have had for many years and done nothing with. We should probably decide what we're going to do with it. And this is the opportunity with an up-to-date characterization of the remaining resource. The idea of pursuing either selling it or going with a royalty agreement, there are pros and cons with both of them. I've articulated in the report that it's probably cleanest to just sell it and let someone who's in the business of extracting aggregate extract it and operate on their timelines and, sell it through some competitive process to get the best value for the municipality for a one-time sale. However, if the municipality wishes to operate under a royalty agreement, we can pursue that as well. And we'll do the research on that and come back with more details. I would just mention, though, likely a royalty agreement because of proximity to the resource being one of the main factors in cost. If we did a royalty agreement, it would likely be for aggregate that's taken elsewhere and not necessarily aggregate that we use on our own roads. So we would probably continue to still buy aggregate, especially for the south end of the municipality. We might use some at the north end out of our own pit, but a lot of the royalty agreement would be taking aggregate elsewhere.
Doug, go ahead.
I need to know the difference between final extraction and limit. Final to me is the lower number. That's what you can take out. Limit extraction is a different word. Can you, maybe I'm the only one who doesn't to me, you can take out 331,000 tons, but on a different day, 576.
So it comes down to how much you want to get it out. So the limit of extraction or the final extraction is easy stuff. So that's with slopes that are the required slopes to finish the pit. If there is more resource there, and if you can get it out, you just have to build the slopes back with overburden material or any other kind of material. The gravel is there; they're within the limits of extraction, so you can get it. You just have to rebuild the slopes. So it costs a little bit more money to get that bigger volume out.
And in your follow-up on that, in your report, it says to rehabilitate. To what point? Like, are we gonna get $1 million worth of gravel out and it costs $850,000? Are we gonna have to haul clay in? To what point do we have to rehabilitate this pit to meet the ministry guidelines?
Do you have to rehabilitate back to those limits of construction? That's the red lines that we're showing. So if you go after the additional resource, and then someone's got to make that decision whether it's worth it or not. You have to know whether there's overburden there to use to rebuild the slopes. But if you go after that, you have to come back and put it in. There is agreements, and Jeff can talk about this, but there is agreements where you don't have to put it back in, like on the common boundary between this pit and the Hully pit. That is a common boundary. You could mine that right out, the agreement with the Hully pit, and you don't have to rebuild it. But where there's no other adjoining pit, you would have to rebuild those slopes once you're done.
And I'll just add that the original set of plans in the aggregate license have a rehabilitation plan, but the rehabilitation plan that's in there is mostly because of the under groundwater or below groundwater extraction. The rehabilitation plan is mostly a pond with a kind of a planted buffer around it. So there would be some minor rehabilitation in accordance with that original rehabilitation plan. We have that rehabilitation plan with the set of documents, and that would be a final cost at the end.
With the house that's built like 12 feet off the west line, the Huron County, or I'm going to say Huron East, didn't do us a big favor. What repercussions that, if you've been there, behind that bush, they let that guy build from here to that wall off the lot line. what kind of problems are we going to get into with heavy equipment, dust and dirt, or vibrations in the ground for this guy? Any concerns about that if we mine it?
I don't have an answer to that right at the moment. I think your license supersedes what has happened since then. I think there would have to be a discussion with MNRF to see how they would handle any complaints that would come from that owner. But you're totally within your rights to operate a licensed pit there, even though they have built within there is a 150 meter, 120 meter buffer around every pit. And if you were starting a new one, you would have to do a noise study and a vibration study for those properties. This has come in after the fact, so I'm not sure the answer to that question.
Councillor Tam?
Just one more thing on the royalty agreements. I know Tom Prout, the former GM of Municipal Bayfield, owns pits and is involved in royalty agreements with McCann's, I believe. But he's told me in the past that they work well. So that just intrigues me a little bit, but I don't know the details of how it works for them. Jeff might have a contact for him though.
No, actually, Tom would be somebody who I would go to. I've spoken to Tom in the past about royalty agreements, and I have some experience with my past employer as well with royalty agreements, and they can work very well. I've got 2 out of 3 examples where they worked fantastically, and one example where it was a little more difficulty just because there was sloppier reporting, and you really have to have an agreement with someone that makes sense. In this case, obviously, it would make sense to work with the operator of the Hully pit. That does require us to kind of hone in on a particular operator. Whereas if you sold it on the open market, you could be more market driven in your selection of a partner. There are times when we can choose who we want to do business with, and it just is a little more complicated, but we can work our way through that with procurement.
Yeah, just I guess a follow up to that. My only thing is that just so we don't get hung up on thinking that we have our own gravel that we need to use, because that might not be the most feasible.
I think that's an excellent point. I think that we want to make sure that we always are aware of doing what we can do for the best value rather than just using it up because we have it and then costing ourselves more money. And I think that's a very good point. It is one of the risks of operating that we kind of choose our own gravel and don't go to market, and then we're paying so much for transportation, we're actually getting nothing for the resource. So those are the factors that have to be considered in good management. I do think it needs to be said it's unlikely that we would use our own gravel at the south end, and we do have another pit. I would say that's unlikely. And again, I also would remind council that we don't have the tandem trucks and we don't have the equipment and we don't have the staff to operate a pit ourselves. We're not in the business of operating gravel pits. And so if you're looking for the substance of my recommendation, that my starting recommendation is we identify what the asset contains. It's almost like a disclosure package, and we offer it on the open market. That's clean, it's tidy, it's good for the purposes of staff time. However, if council feels that they would like to investigate, or they'd like to at least feel strongly about exploring other options for the resource for a continuous income, I'll certainly do that work. But I thought this was a very important point to check in with council. We had given some estimates of what we thought was in the pit, and we had given some preliminary information about what we thought the license permitted. And we also know that we've had a house built there. And my understanding of the Aggregate Resources Act, it's really in place to protect the resource as well. And the legislation is really based on making sure we use the resource and don't sterilize the resource. So I think the good thing for the municipality to do is to make that opportunity available. And the legislation allows for that. But if we did sell it on the open market, you might get someone that buys it and has no intention of extracting aggregate. So that's one of the downsides. So it's really a conversation for council about where they want to see staff resources spent going forward.
Councillor Schminkowski?
Well, I guess I wanted to point out we've had discussions at various times about costs. One of them being gravel. I know Mike Kramer, our roads department manager, has reminded us every time that when budget rolls around and gravel tenders need to go out, there's only one. We used to have multiple bidders. Now we only have a single bidder that will offer a price. So we're not even in a competitive, what you would call a traditional competitive tender process anymore. So I think I would be prepared to make a motion to explore partnership agreements. I think it behooves us to find out what the true potential of that resource is before we entertain any idea of releasing that property to another owner. The cost of these materials, they're becoming scarcer, harder to find, and more expensive with each passing day. I think we owe it to the ratepayers to explore the partnership options at this time and find out what the true value of the resource is.
Councillor Tam again.
Yeah, I'd agree with Dean on that point. I think if you can get 180,000 a year out of it in an agreement for 9 years, that's pretty good, reliable income. But that's just my 2 cents. And then you still own it.
Just one little word there, Mike. You said if. Yeah, you mentioned if we can.
I don't disagree with the gentleman across the room. I don't want to make extra work for you, Jeff, Rick. But if in the report, can you just add what it's worth now, as is, if we were to sell it, and what it would be worth in 10 years when we empty it? And you know, we can do the dollar amount in between it. That's fine. But I just think, in all fairness for the report, if we can have that comparison, if that's okay.
Sure, we could. And so if I come back to council with this, this is really a matter of me trying to scope work. I didn't want to do all the work on a royalty agreement if council has no interest in a royalty agreement or vice versa. So I think what you're asking is that we do some additional work on both. And just as a matter of full disclosure, as we start to move into valuation, we'll have the municipality has an obligation to do that part of the conversation in closed session. So, but one of the things we could do is get a real estate appraisal and at least get an indication what a real estate agent would suggest we sell the property for. It's going to be really tricky to put a price on what it's worth on as an aggregate producing for aggregate. You could tell what somebody would be willing to pay for 37.5 acres of rural land by traditional sales, but there aren't a lot of gravel sales to do comparables. But we can do some kind of an estimate in that and then bring both back. And I'm prepared to do that, and I think that would be the next logical point to check in with council if that's council's wish.
I'm going to ask a question. Well, you were busy. So the two things do go hand in hand, Jeff, because it's easy to put out a tender for a gravel pit, say tender, and it's over when a month from now. Didn't like it. The royalty deal, we have to deal with one person and one person only. That is our current supplier of gravel, correct? Are you at liberty to say who that is? I am, but I can't.
Well, no, I could. I mean, the logical person, and I'm happy. I think this is full disclosure. The logical company for a partnership agreement would be the company that's operating the pit to the east, which is the Hully pit, which is currently Lavis or Miller Group. And so that would be who you would want to talk to. But I think we'd have to explore whether there was even interest, and then we'd have to check in with council about rationalizing that choice. Because that is a choice to choose a partner, which in this case I think you can completely justify because of, if for no other reason, the aggregate in the common buffer zones between our two properties is where the good sort of profit is, so to speak. And frankly, I think that buffer zone on the other side of the property may be somewhat sterilized by the residential development that's been allowed. While we could probably stay within the pit. We may not be able to go in the buffer on the west side. That's unfortunate and kind of a sad loss of some of the aggregate, but we'd certainly explore it, but it may be lost to us. So I think, you know, we have a logical partner to go and talk to. And again, these conversations would then go back into closed session as contract negotiations, and they would be reported out in open session. But at this point in time, the disclosure of what's in the property is public information. And the report's not finalized. We didn't share the report with tonight's council meeting because it's still in its final draft. And we actually had Paul present the highlights of the report, but I don't want a draft version of it floating around when it's possible that it'll be sold, because then you're dealing with that disclosure of making sure you've got the right one out there. So there will be a report finalized and filed, which I consider to be public information. It's done with public dollars. But what we then do with that report in terms of choices for selling, licensing, or sitting on it, some of that conversation will happen in closed session.
Hey, any further discussion at this time? Okay, I just need a little bit of clarification here, because the motion is broke down into two parts, and I'm not sure that you want both parts.
I think I found out I'm getting both. So you're not getting or, you're getting and. And you just may be a little less detail on both when I first check back in.
Okay, so I'm going to change the or to an and just to clarify it. So the motion or the recommendation that we have here then is that the municipality of West Perth direct staff to research options for sale of McKillop Pit and report back to council, and research options for entering into a partnership agreement for resuming extraction on a royalty basis and report back to council. Does that meet everybody's approval? Okay. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Tam, Councillor Turkowski. Any further discussion on this? Dean, go ahead.
Through you, your worship, I'll reiterate, good clean gravel is getting more and more difficult to find in Ontario, especially this area, as time goes on. I'm interested to await the results of the investigation that staff will do on this issue. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Dean. So it's been duly moved and seconded. Thanks, Paul, very much for your time here. All those in favor of this motion? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. All right, the next item again is from Jeff, and it's with regards to the police services contract extension. So, Jeff.
Apologies. Thank you, Mayor McKenzie. Yeah, I think I'm on now. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Murray? I see you checking. Yeah, okay, thanks. So I'm lit up. The report was provided with the package. I would just highlight that we are in this interim time where we are waiting for the legislation to be proclaimed, at which point in time our contract would be null. And so there is a possibility that this extension, we would never use it if they proclaim the legislation in the next few months. But we want to have the extension in place in case the rest of the legislation is not brought in, so we're not caught without a contract on January 1st, 2023, because the consequences of that is that it would throw our local police services provider currently into disarray without really having some notice about how things would unfold. This extension of the contract could be as much as 2 years. As I said, it might not be at all. And I don't want to create the perception that we wouldn't explore other options when the time comes. It's just this is not the time, because we have to get transitioned to the detachment board under the new legislative arrangement. We would then, if we wish to explore other options for policing, we would explore it in some detail at that time. and then we could make our choice about how West Perth wishes to proceed. So this is a bit of a maintenance extension, and I would recommend that we extend. I'll mention that we spoke extensively with North Perth, who is also the other contract service that would be in the same detachment board, and Perth East doesn't have a contract, so they don't have to make this choice. But North Perth and us are both going to pursue this 2-year extension.
Okay, any questions with regard to that? Anything further, Steve, you want to add?
Just that the Police Services Board are in favor of that. They voted on it and said they would recommend that the council follow that advisement.
I think it gives the new council a little bit of time to figure things out where they're going to go. You have a question,
Jeff? You said Perth East doesn't have a contract. They just get OPP policing for a fee of. Our contract is that they have a station here, right? I remember June Demerling would be the one. Yeah.
Our contract has enhancements, which include a dedicated staff sergeant and a dedicated support staff person. And so, and then in exchange for that, we provide a presence in a building or provide a location for staff. And in our case, at the intersection of 8 and 23, I think the municipality has traditionally considered that to be an important service for West Perth. That doesn't mean that's the way it always has to be, but that's where we are today. And if we were gonna, where we had to completely negotiate what it looked like in the future, I think we'd want to consider some enhancements. I'm just not sure which ones. That would be a council decision.
Any other questions at this time? All right, moving on then. The recommendation is that the municipality of West Perth authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal an amending agreement between the province of Ontario and the municipality of West Perth for the provision of police services that will extend the current agreement until December 31st, 2024. We have a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Harold, and seconded by Councillor Rose. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. The next item is with regards to an agreement with North Perth for fire protection. And are you doing this one, Jeff? Okay, go ahead.
Chief Hunter is not able to attend this evening, and he's got a scheduled commitment for the next council meeting. So rather than lead this report, Chief Hunter worked with North Perth Chief Janny Pape to put together the details of the extension. I will point out that the contract as it's written, or the agreement as it's written and attached to this report, is slightly different than the one that was approved by North Perth Council, and we'll have to go back through with North Perth for them to either amend what they approved, because it's got a more accurate map and a few things in the current contract than one that they originally entertained. The service that we're talking about is for the Moncton Fire area, and Chief Hunter has put together this agreement, is recommending that it covers the proper liability clauses and service clauses that reflect what we're currently doing and protect our municipality and protect North Perth. If there are extensive questions and municipal council would prefer to get answers, I can take those questions tonight and report them back on August 22nd, or we could defer the final consideration of this until September 6th if there's questions that I'm unable to answer.
Thanks, Jeff. Questions from council?
I emailed Chief Hunter last night, but of course I didn't realize he was on holidays. So I asked Jeff, and it was we're just going up cost of living this year. I had actually asked how many functions that they went to. I didn't know. Remember, anybody who sat here 7 years ago would remember we went from a very high number to a lower number, right? I don't know if it's public knowledge, but
yeah, the contract dropped significantly.
Yeah, it was going on how many places they actually went to. We have to protect our people in the north. But that was the question, is how many times did they go into West Perth? And we don't have anybody on the North Perth. Jeff Brick?
So I reached out to Fire Chief Janny Pape. Actually, we took a look at the Fire Pro data, and it's not easily tracked. So I reached out to Janny Pape this afternoon after I talked to Deputy Mayor Ite about this question, and they just weren't able to generate the number before the end of the day. So we don't have it, and if it's the number of calls that we have in that fire area, if that's an important question that council wants an answer to before we proceed with the service and the extension, I'm satisfied to say defer it, and I'll get you that for the next meeting. I will overlay that with the comment, though, that we're talking about providing protection, and so I'm not sure what the metric's going to help us with in terms of how we proceed with it. That's the cost of service that was agreed to in 2015, and I think we all agreed that was a fair calculation method then, and it's simply being extended.
Initially, it was figured out basically on a per property cost and based on what was happening in some other municipalities that North Perth was dealing with. So that's how we arrived at the original number, and it's just gone up. The yearly cost, as Doug has said, is just the cost of inflation. So I think it's giving us the coverage in the north that our ratepayers expect. But if there's additional information you want, by all means, we can defer it. I don't see any hands going up, so I'll read the recommendation here then. The recommendation is the municipality of West Perth accept the offer from the municipality of North Perth to provide certain fire services to the defined area of West Perth in the Moncton area, with the provisions noted in the attached agreement, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign and seal the fire services agreement with North Perth. Moved by Councillor Trinkowski and seconded by Councillor Tam. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. And while we're on that subject, I'm going to mention this. If we maybe shouldn't be considering something similar with the Seaforth fire area, they have decided to disband their board, so we're not at the table to make any of the decisions anymore with regards to that fire department. We actually had a small say, not a lot, but we did have a small say. And the agreement seems to be working fairly well in the north, and I'm wondering if we shouldn't be considering a similar agreement with here in east for the Seaforth fire area.
So yes,
go ahead.
It's a great question, and Chief Hunter and I had spoken about this, and with the disbanding of the committee where we had representation, we do see it as a logical extension to lay out the services that we receive and our expectations for those services in a service agreement, which we bring back to council. And again, the logical starting point would be the basis that we've used in the past, plus cost of living annually, but just get it papered. So I'll be speaking to, we wanted to get this one cleaned up, and we'll use it somewhat as a template. And we have not spoken to Huron East. I know Chief Hunter was going to reach out a couple weeks ago and start this conversation because we figured this would come. But we'll follow up now that we've got this one done.
whole thing. Do I need to do it over again? I can do that over again. Sorry. So the Municipality of West Perth approved the request from the Mitchell Lions Club for the one-way request on Blanchard Street on August the 6th, 2022, and direct staff to provide the appropriate barriers and signage with regards to their fish fry. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Rose. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Council reports. First one is from the BIA, the minutes from April the 6th. Councillor Bell, anything you want to highlight there?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. The next item is Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, and Councillor Matheson, anything there you want to highlight?
No, there's the minutes from the two May 18th and June 15th meetings. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions for Cheryl on that? All right. Moving on then, just a recommendation that the Municipality of West Perth accepts reports from councillors as information. We have a mover and seconder for that, Councillor Matheson, and seconded by Councillor Murray. All those in favor? That is carried. We do have a couple bylaws here. First bylaw is Bylaw 51 to amend Bylaw 96 for the Darling Municipal Drain. And the second bylaw is Bylaw 52, which is the cemetery bylaw that we talked about earlier in the evening. So the recommendation here is that the Municipality of West Perth gives first, second, and third and final reading to Bylaws 51, 2022, and 52, 2022, the second day of August, 2022. We have a mover and seconder for those bylaws. Councillor Tinkowski and Councillor Matheson. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Upcoming events, there's a number of them listed there. Certainly, I imagine everybody's aware of some of them. August 19th is the nomination day, final day for nominations. The 21st is a decoration day at North Logan and at Roy's. And it's my understanding that Roy's is an open house, come and go with no specific program scheduled, but North Logan will have a scheduled program for a certain period of time. Next regular meeting is the 22nd, and then we get into September and we have our regular meeting in Mitchell Fair, and then our second meeting in September. Anything coming up that I have missed here? Murray? Yes. Oh, I know there's one. Yes, go ahead, Murray.
Yes, we're going to try and do a music in the park again. It's on the 12th. At same time, 2 o'clock, 2 to 4 in the afternoon. It is Bob Lose is playing.
Good, good. Excellent. Well, the date of that is the 13th, I believe, isn't it? 12th? 12th. August 12th. It's a Sunday, right? It's the Sunday. 14th. Okay, so that would be August the 14th then. Good. Yeah. All right. Certainly the last one was well attended, Murray. Okay. Notices of motion, and I had mentioned this last month, and the recommendation was that West Perth consider the possibility of having a homecoming in 2024 to recognize the sesquicentennial of the 150th. I never know whether it's a birthday or an anniversary, but of the now Ward of Mitchell, and it would also be the 26th anniversary of West Perth. And I just wanted a general discussion, some feedback from council on that. I think at this particular stage, if there is some people that are out there that we think would be good, and maybe if we can just kind of accumulate those names, and then after the election, we can go, the new council can meet and go through some names there, and we can just have the names in the office. I don't want to throw names out at this particular time. It's probably something that if we're going to talk about people and names, it should be done in a closed session. But if you have some names or some people have come forward, by all means, let's get a list in the office, and then we can go from there. But I'm opening it up for feedback. I know I've had some feedback, and I'm hoping that the rest of you have as well.
I'm struggling with my voice too. I've had a few people reach out that are very interested, a committee actually, so that's cool.
Right. Anybody? Oh, Dan, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe I would just propose to council and yourself that if council's interested in this, that you direct staff to advertise for interest in a committee to organize a homecoming event, and staff can collect anyone that comes forward and bring that to council at a later date.
Doug, go ahead.
I gave Jeff the name of the person who approached me about being the chair, was a vice chair 25 years ago, as a matter of fact. So he's the one who brought it to my attention. I brought it to Jeff's attention.
And I would just add that when we did the Canada 150th, we created a little terms of reference that kind of articulated what the purpose of the committee was, how we would manage membership, what the role of members were, who did the communications, and what the budget from the municipality was. So we could probably start with developing, we can sort of take off that old one and start with it if council wants us to put the resources into preparing what that looks like as a terms of reference. Terms of reference is really nice for a committee because it really helps to keep the focus, and it could become unfocused very quickly. So we can start from that base, report back with what the terms of reference would look like, and then perhaps advertise for that committee and start organizing. It is a little tricky around election time to be doing one of these, just with campaigning and everything else. So we'll sort of work on the timing that works best.
Any comments from anybody else? I've had no negative comments. I've had all positive, that everybody thinks it's a good idea, and I've had some comments from some of the service clubs that they're willing to do whatever they can support it. So I think it's a go, would be my take on it. And it's just a matter of timing and put a committee together. So you have your motion there, Dan, that you would like?
That the Council of the Municipality of West Perth direct staff to advertise the creation of a committee to organize homecoming in 2024 to recognize the 150-year anniversary of the Mitchell Ward, and that council direct staff to report back with a draft terms of reference.
Do we have a mover and seconder for that motion there? Councillor Harold, Councillor Rose. Any further discussion on that? Just say Brussels just had one, I believe, this past weekend, and tremendous turnout there, and certainly Moncton's was very successful. And there's another one, I believe it's Formosa, is it, Jeff, is having one as well? Or yeah, just past weekend as well. So I think people are looking for a reason to celebrate, and this is probably giving them the opportunity. And I guess I should mention too, as Jeff did, possibly the project at Peterson Park might be a project worth considering. I know the last time, going back 50 years ago, I believe it was, the fundraiser was money towards the arena, which is something everybody can use. And this is very similar, only on a lot smaller scale. And the last one, Doug, do you know, 25 years, it was something for the arena. Was it dressing rooms? I think it was arena related anyways, that we did. So certainly the Peterson Park project would maybe be very similar and worthwhile. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Okay. So the motion has been read. We have a mover and seconder for that. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. I don't have anything under other business. Anybody else? Dean, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Through you, I wanted to formally request to Councillor Rose in his role as the chair of the Heritage Committee. There was a constituent mentioned that the commemorative plaque that's located in Bornholm that commemorated the 150th anniversary of the founding of Logan Township, as well, I think, references the original township hall. Anyway, that plaque is in need of refurbishment. The stand is in good condition, but the lettering of the plaque is faded, similar to a cemetery monument where the letters fade out. So I wanted to ask if Councillor Rose, through his committee, can investigate what could be done to refurbish that item, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other items under other business? Okay, we do have a closed session. I guess a motion would be in order that we move to closed session at 9 o'clock for the purpose of addressing personnel matters about an identifiable individual. So a motion that we proceed to closed session at 9 o'clock. Got a mover and seconder, Anna Marie Murray, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Tam. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, we're in closed session.
Recording stopped.
Okay, we're back into open session, and we do have one item coming out of closed session, and the recommendation is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth approve the allocation of up to $15,000 from the Health Reserve for a health and safety gap analysis project and related training to be completed in 2022. We have a mover and seconder for that recommendation, Councillor Tunkowski, Councillor Murray. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. All right, next item then is confirmatory bylaw. It's bylaw 53, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Perth. Be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed the second day of August 2022. We have a mover for the confirming bylaw. Deputy Mayor Ait and Councillor Rose, all those in favor? That is carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn at 9:23. Mover and seconder to adjourn. Councillor Harold and Councillor Bell, all those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.